We touch each other with hope, then withdraw in fear. Carl Jung. Have you ever been in a relationship where someone felt like a dream at first? They saw you, heard you, made you feel chosen, but then, the moment you started opening your heart, they began to pull away. When you needed them the most, they just weren't there anymore. No breakup, no real explanation, just that familiar feeling, being left behind. If that's ever happened to you, this is not your fault. You may have been loving someone with a dismissive avoidant attachment style, someone who doesn't leave right away, but disappears slowly until you're the only one still trying to hold on to a ghost. In today's America, where over 40% of adults show signs of insecure attachment, this is no longer just a personal story. It's a social issue, one that affects mental health, emotional growth, and the very fabric of real love. In today's video, we're breaking down the 4 hauntingly accurate stages of every avoidant relationship. And most importantly, the 2 endings that always come. One of them might be the story you're in right now. And the real question is, which path will you take? Do you know what's the most painful part of being in a relationship with an avoidant partner? It's not the ending. It's the slow emotional starvation, in silence. They don't leave you right away. In fact, they make you feel like you've been chosen, as if you're the first person they've ever truly opened up to after a long season of loneliness. At first, their presence is intense. They listen deeply. They show up meaningfully. They love you in a way that makes you believe, this time, it's real. This is the idealization and pursuit phase, when the avoidant isn't just loving you, but loving the version of you they've created in their imagination. It's not manipulation. It's a psychological survival strategy. To the avoidant mind, intimacy is a double-edged sword. They want love, but fear that love will cost them their freedom and autonomy, which they've fought so hard to preserve, often since a childhood of emotional neglect or control. So they love, from a distance. Yet paradoxically, at the beginning, they're often the one pushing for closeness. They initiate depth, share feelings, make future plans, show signs of commitment. To you, it feels like connection. To them, it's a controlled investment, a way to test whether you can love them without consuming them. And then, as if on some invisible timer, the moment the relationship stabilizes, when you begin to relax and emotionally rely on them, they withdraw. But they don't break up with you. They fade, slowly, quiet. They text less, show up less, engage less. You don't know what changed, so you try harder. You reach out more, you love louder. But in that effort, you unknowingly trigger their deepest fear, being emotionally engulfed. The closer you get, the further they pull away. The more you ask for clarity, the more they blame stress, needing space, or say things are moving too fast. But if you pay attention, you'll notice they're not tired in general. They're tired of you. This marks the beginning of the reality and anxiety phase, when the avoidant no longer sees you through the lens of fantasy. Now, they see your real needs, your emotional expectations, your human vulnerability, and that terrifies them. Their mind flashes back to the past, moments where closeness meant control, vulnerability led to abandonment. Even if you've done nothing wrong, your emotional presence triggers their old wounds. And rather than open up, they shut down. From here, the relationship becomes an emotional chess game. You chase connection. They protect themselves with distance. You start doubting yourself. From someone who once felt safe, you start feeling too much. You shrink your needs, hide your emotions, betray your truth, all just to keep what once felt effortless, their presence. But the avoidant doesn't need you to be less emotional. They need you to not activate their fear, something you cannot control unless they choose to heal. Avoidants aren't heartless. They're trapped in a survival pattern where love equals pain, closeness equals loss of control, and vulnerability equals danger. Everything they do, from pulling away to staying silent, comes from one internal mission: protect the heart before it gets hurt again. But what they don't realize is, they're hurting others first, in order to avoid being hurt. Part 1 closed with the image of a relationship where one side tries to reach out while the other keeps pulling away, until the tension builds up. Now we step into the climax, the decisive stage, where 2 opposite paths appear. This is the moment of truth, either a breakthrough that leads to healing or the endless repetition of the old cycle. And first, let's look at the first scenario, the outcome when the avoidant refuses to heal. In this scenario, the relationship comes to an end, not through a mature conversation, but often through silence, disappearance, or a harsh breakup filled with blame. The avoidant often leaves with the belief that all the mistakes were caused by the other person. They convince themselves that they were too suffocated, too controlled, too demanded of, and leaving is the only way to protect their freedom. Yet ironically, that is not true freedom, but merely an escape from the wounds within. After ending a relationship, they quickly look for someone new. At first, the novelty gives them a temporary anesthetic. Excitement, a sense of safety in starting over, rewriting the story without confronting old pain. But after just a few weeks or months, once attachment begins to grow, the same familiar fears return. Their body reacts as before, a racing heart, a mind on high alert, and once again, they raise the wall of distance. When this cycle repeats, the danger is not only that they hurt the new partner, but also that they themselves increasingly reinforce the belief, I can never truly bond. Over time, avoidants gradually lose their ability to trust in love. Each failed relationship becomes proof to them, no one really loves me, everyone leaves me, or everyone demands too much. And that very belief becomes an invisible chain pulling them further away from real connection. From a psychological perspective, this is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because they believe love is always dangerous, they behave in ways that make love dangerous. They withdraw, they grow cold, they ignore, which hurts the partner. The partner reacts with anger, demands, or leaving, and thus the prophecy in their mind becomes true. They become more suspicious, more isolated, and eventually lose faith in attachment altogether. In this journey, their dominant emotion is not happiness, but emptiness. They may fool themselves with work, with a new partner, with shallow pleasures. But when night falls, in the silence, the feeling of loneliness always knocks at the door. They do not dare admit that what they fear most is not another person's demands, but the touch of their own self, where unhealed wounds still remain. This outcome, therefore, is not truly an ending, but a spiral with no way out. The avoidant walks from one relationship to the next, like moving from one dark room into another. They think they've escaped the old shadow, but in reality, that shadow always follows, because it lives in their own heart and mind. Suspicion and isolation gradually become habits, making it harder and harder for them to open up, to connect, to love wholeheartedly. And when we observe this picture, we understand why relationships with avoidance often leave their partners feeling, no matter what I do, it's never enough. Because, in truth, the problem does not lie in you, nor entirely in them, but in the attachment wound that has never been touched. And if the avoidant refuses to heal, then all attempts at love only deepen their fear, their doubt, and their withdrawal. This is the climax of the story. One side trying to enter love with sincerity, while the other repeatedly turns away and reenacts the old cycle. Yet the interesting part is, from this very climax, the story does not end with just one path. Because there is still another road, the path of breakthrough, where love no longer becomes a vicious cycle, but instead transforms into a catalyst for healing. And that is when we step into the opposite outcome, where the avoidant dares to face themselves, to admit their fear, and to turn loss into an opportunity for change. The climax ended with two diverging paths. One side trapped in the old cycle of suspicion, isolation, and loss of trust, while the other opens into a rare but meaningful possibility, the second outcome, where the avoidant begins the journey of healing. This is not an easy road, for it requires them to confront fear itself, to admit that the problem has never truly been their partner, but has always come from within. That moment of realization is like a shattered mirror reflecting back the fragments of buried memories, an unsafe childhood, emotional distance, or repeated wounds that force the heart to build walls of defense. And once the roots are seen clearly, the avoidant can begin the process of change. This road often begins with therapy or conscious methods of self-healing. In therapy, they learn to name emotions instead of avoiding them. Feelings that once seemed dangerous, sadness, longing, anxiety when someone comes close, are now placed in a safe context to be observed. The therapist or companion helps them distinguish between real threats and past echoes. It is like resetting the brain's alarm system, Instead of blaring every time someone touches them, it slowly learns to tell the difference between gestures of love and signals of danger. From there, they learn emotional regulation, a skill that may seem simple, but for avoidance is a huge challenge. In the past, when emotions rose high, they only knew how to slam the brakes, vanish, or freeze. Now, they practice deep breathing, journaling, honest conversations about what they feel. Instead of walking away during conflict, they try staying, admitting, "Right now, I feel anxious. I fear being trapped. But I want to understand this feeling rather than run from it." Even this small act marks a leap forward in healing. As self-regulation improves, the door to secure attachment begins to open. They gradually learn to share their needs and boundaries instead of hiding them. They learn commitment, not lofty promises, but consistency between words and actions. And most importantly, they begin to understand respect, not just respecting their partner, but themselves, no longer resigning to being the eternal runner. Step by step, relationships that once always ended in suspicion now have the chance to transform into safe spaces for growth. What's remarkable is that in this process, it is not only the avoidant who changes. Their partner, whether the one who stayed or someone new, also learns to set boundaries. Instead of falling into the role of rescuer, trying to prove love by carrying all the weight, they begin to understand love is not a one-person battle. They no longer rush in to fix or heal on the other's behalf, but stand firm in their principle: "I am here, but I will not do the work for you. I love you, but I also protect my own value." That firmness creates a new balance, one that forces the avoidant to learn how to show up, rather than rely on others to always pull them back. When both individuals step into this safe zone, the relationship gradually becomes a shared journey. There are still times when the avoidant stumbles, still feels the urge to withdraw. But instead of disappearing into silence, they learn to say, "I need some space, but I will come back." And indeed, they do return, no longer vanishing indefinitely as before. Their partner, with strong boundaries, no longer panics or clings, but respects that pause while keeping a subtle connection alive. This is the hallmark of a healthy attachment. They may step apart, but do not abandon. They may face conflict, but do not blame. They may get hurt, but they repair together. The beauty of this outcome is not in the fairy tale idea of happily ever after, but in love becoming a catalyst for personal growth. The avoidant learns that love is not a trap, but a safe place to try and fail, to stumble and rise again. Their partner learns that loving does not mean exhausting self-sacrifice, but building a shoulder to stand side by side. And when these lessons intertwine, the relationship truly transforms from a cycle of fear into an embrace of healing. Compared to the first scenario, this is an entirely opposite picture. There, avoidance led to isolation and mistrust. Here, courage brings growth and connection. This shows that love is not an unchangeable destiny, but a mirror reflecting human actions and choices. The avoidant may choose to keep running forever, but they may also choose to stay, to heal, to build real connection. And each choice not only reshapes the relationship, but also defines their entire life. From this point, we move into the next part, Part 3, where the story is no longer just about two individuals, but expands into the shared journey of mature love. Here, love is not just attraction or clinging, but the foundation of companionship, of growing together, and of a bond deep enough to transcend every fear of attachment. In Part 3, we saw that the journey of mature love does not end with two people bonding securely, but expands into a shared process where both grow through each other's presence. At this stage, love is no longer about clinging or obsessing over having the other, but becomes a safe space where each person can find themselves. When the avoidant dares to stay and learns to regulate emotions, when the partner sets boundaries and protects their own value, the relationship not only escapes the old cycle, but also transforms into a foundation of maturity, where every conversation, every conflict, every silence becomes an opportunity to understand and expand one's perspective. In mature love, silence is no longer the same as the silent treatment, but can be a needed pause for self-reflection. Differences are no longer threats, but sources of richness, where one learns depth from the other, and in return, offers new perspectives. The avoidant learns that freedom is not lost by being with someone, as long as they remain truthful to their emotions. The anxious partner begins to understand that love is not control, but trust, allowing love to grow freely. This marks an important turning point. Love stops being a power game of who gets closer and who pulls away first, and becomes a new cycle, a balanced rhythm of giving and receiving. Both learn to pause when overwhelmed, to return when the heart is ready. Old wounds don't vanish immediately, but instead of denying or fleeing, they become bridges toward deeper understanding. Each conflict becomes a mirror, each act of sharing a repair, and through this, the relationship matures alongside the individuals within it. And when we observe this transformation, we see a truth. Real love is not fixed, but a continuous flow. It changes with how two people face themselves and face each other. With courage to stay and respect for boundaries, love becomes a journey where one does not have to lose freedom to bond, nor lose bonding to keep freedom. This is the foundation for long-term companionship, a love that is neither shallow nor imprisoning, but one of maturity and full presence. From here, the story of love opens into a deeper dimension, where we connect it with larger philosophies about the nature of love itself. For like every inner journey, love is not just the private story of two people, but a reflection of thoughts that have existed throughout human history. And among these, one philosophy stands out with profound insight: Osho's vision of love. In his book Love, Osho wrote, "Love has meaning only when you are free." For the avoidant, this sentence touches their deepest longing: freedom. For years, they feared that bonding meant captivity, meant losing themselves to keep a relationship alive. But Osho offers a new perspective. True love is not a chain, but the space to give each other enough freedom to be fully themselves. The avoidant needs to see this clearly. Attachment has never been the real threat. What is frightening is not love, but losing oneself in a relationship where one cannot be honest. Once they realize this, love no longer feels like a cage, but becomes the doorway to a deeper kind of freedom. The freedom to express, to be vulnerable, to stop living in a role. For the pursuer, those with an anxious attachment style, this philosophy also brings an essential reminder. They need to learn that love is not salvation, not about sacrificing themselves to heal the other. Love, as Osho teaches, is understanding, but it must come with boundaries. Loving with clarity means not placing the burden of changing someone else on your shoulders, but letting them grow through their own journey. You accompany, but you don't carry. You share, but you don't lose yourself. The union of these two lessons, the avoidant learning to face without fearing loss of freedom, and the pursuer learning to love without rescuing, creates a philosophy of mature love. It moves both out of the cycle of opposition and opens a space where love becomes the resonance of two free beings. Part 4 opened up a broader vision, connecting personal experiences of love with human philosophy, especially Osho's idea that love has meaning only when you are free. Love is not a chain of shackles, nor is it a cloak of salvation that one person wears to rescue the other. True love is the meeting point of two independent beings, each with their own identity and freedom, but choosing to come closer to co-create a meaningful bond. When the avoidant realizes that attachment does not mean losing freedom, they stop fearing and dare to stay. When the pursuer realizes that love is not proven through sacrifice or control, they finally breathe lighter and allow love to grow naturally. This philosophy ushers us into a new threshold, love as an art of existence, where both partners learn to mature without imprisoning each other, and to understand without rescuing one another. From this philosophical foundation, we move into something more practical. Part 5, Solutions and a Call to Action. Because if awareness remains only in thought, love is still just a beautiful but abstract idea. Only when each person puts it into practice do changes become tangible, and the old cycle finally breaks. If you are the avoidant, the first step is to dare to acknowledge your fear. Don't deny it, and don't hide it behind the mask of, "I'm fine, I don't need anyone." Name it. Fear of losing freedom, fear of being hurt, fear of not being enough. Only when the light of awareness shines on it can the darkness begin to fade. Then, trust that healing is possible. Therapy, self-reflection, or simply honest conversations with someone you trust. All of these can be anchors that help you gradually remove the armor of defense. If you are the pursuer, the solution lies in learning to become secure within yourself first. Do not let love become a competition of proving that you love more, are more patient, or sacrifice more. Real love is not a string of efforts to be acknowledged, but a balanced presence where you know how to love while also protecting your personal value. Set clear boundaries. I love you, but I will not lose myself in this love. When you stand firm like this, you not only create safety for yourself, but you also unconsciously create the safe space for the other to dare to stay. These solutions are not rigid formulas, but guiding steps for each person to begin the journey. What matters most is the attitude, the courage to be honest, the determination to stay consistent, the clarity to love wisely. And from that attitude, love truly transforms, from a cycle of fear into a journey of healing and growth. The conclusion of this journey is not simply a full stop, but a doorway opening for both attachment styles, the avoidant and the pursuer, to look back at themselves and step forward with a renewed awareness. Because love, at its core, is not where we find a half to fill our emptiness, but a mirror reflecting both our wounds and our potential for growth. If you are the avoidant, remember that the freedom you seek is not found in cutting ties with everyone, but in the ability to stay present without losing yourself. When you allow yourself to remain, even just a little, you open the possibility for your heart to experience safe love. A love that neither chains you nor abandons you, but offers you both the sky and a harbor. If you are the pursuer, engrave this truth. Love is not a competition to prove your worth, nor is it a mission to save someone. When you learn to stand firm in your inner security, you can finally love without losing yourself, and without unconsciously feeding the other's fear. The love you deserve is the kind born of both freedom and respect, not one driven by anxiety or dependency. For both, this journey does not end with the current relationship, but continues as the lifelong path of learning to love yourself, to set boundaries, and to open your heart at the right time. Because love is never a fixed formula, but an art of living where we dare to be vulnerable and steady, to give and to hold back, to be both strong and tender at once. And so, the ending of this video is also a reminder. True love does not begin when you find someone to lean on, but when you are strong enough to be yourself and still open enough to welcome another. Healing is possible, growth is possible, and a safe love, where two people stop playing chase and instead walk side by side, is absolutely what you deserve.